Work it, make it, do it, make sense. Harder, better, faster, stronger.
And we're live.
Hello and welcome back to another This Is What Happens When You Blend Heavy Metal with the Fast and the Furious episode of the First Time Watchers podcast.
Because we like to watch.
My name is Tim Costa.
I'm Romano De Silva.
And I'm Blazing Walter Vinci.
And if you'd like to send feedback, you can always email us at firsttimewatchers@gmail.com. Speaking of feedback, we received an email from listener Mike Close regarding our Under Siege 2 episode from a few weeks back.
Yeah!
Yes. A couple weeks back, it was my pick for a second-time watchers, and we talked about Under Siege 2 Dark Territory, because why not? Anyways, Mike writes, "Hello, first-time watchers. I just wanted to give Steven Seagal some well-due credibility. He is really a seriously legit Aikido master. He was the first American to teach it in Japan. Aikido isn't supposed to be flashy with hard hits, acrobatics, and kicks like Batman and John Wick. Aikido patiently uses the weight and momentum of an attacker to throw their own balance against them. This explains the Mike Myers-like slowness Steven has. The throws and techniques Steven uses are really well done, very realistic, and what you're seeing on screen is an actual master at work, unlike, say, any of the Bourne movies." Oh boy. As far as the flashy hand-waving, yes, it's a bad trope that is supposed to look cool. Even Iko Uwais does it all the time. The Raid Redemption was just as much, if not more, hand waviness. It's just filler in the choreography, basically. The skill is still in there. And yes, Steven runs very funny indeed. Mike. Well, Mike, thank you for that email. And look, if you kind of lose me, Mike, when you introduce Iko Uwais, stating that he does the same hand waviness, and sure, he may do it, and that's fine. But Iko Uwais knows how to capture the camera well. I think my argument was that Steven Seagal does not know how to capture or look interesting on the camera. What do you guys make out of this? What about you, Wally?
I think that it's not so much. I mean, Iko Uwais is. I mean, dude's just a phenomenal fucking fighter. Like, I mean, like, you don't see that kind of stuff. But I would say Gareth Evans knows how to work the camera better than the directors. Of Under Siege 2, because they're the ones getting, like, Gareth Evans knows when to go close to the action and then when to pull away so you can see what's going on and get an idea of what's happening.
Yes.
And I think that goes a long way into making a fight scene feel brutal. Even like in the John Wick movies, I think they also do a really good job of that. The third one less so, but the first two, that when to get close and when to pull back to give you that this is what's like. It's like you're in the middle of the fight, but then also giving you enough landscape to see like the cool moves instead of just like knees and elbows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's a really good point about the directors and the camera work there. Hermano, any comment here?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll just echo what I kind of touched on already. Is he just is trying too hard to seem cool and like unstoppable, and he just comes off looking bored. Like, it's just not exciting. Like, I understand that it may be realistic and all that, but that doesn't always translate well to film. Like all those other guys, like they're doing things that translate better to the medium. Like,
yep.
Maybe could totally destroy all those other guys in real life or whatever, but it still doesn't change the fact that he's just charisma free. He doesn't seem like he's trying overly hard, and it just ends up looking somewhat silly on film.
Yeah,
so, I don't know.
I really wonder, if we had filmmakers like Gareth Evans or David Leitch back in the 80s or early 90s, what they would have been able to do with people like Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal. It's really interesting how the filmmaking in terms of action and fight scenes have evolved over the past couple of decades. And it's just, it goes to show too how much these modern filmmakers have studied, fighting and fight choreography and how to utilize it best within the frame. And so, yeah. Well, anyways, Mike, thank you so much for that email. And if anybody else has a comment or anything to say, just please send an email to firsttimewatchers@gmail.com. In this episode, we'll be discussing the 2009 Japanese animated film Redline. But before we get into that, it is time for Yay or Nay. This is the part of the show where we discuss what we have seen recently on our own. I will go first. Two things for me. A rewatch. Starting Spooky Movie Month a little bit early, I decided to rewatch 1996's Scream, directed by Wes Craven. This was more of a blind spot for the significant other, and because she isn't a fan of horror movies, she doesn't like to be scared. But I said we got to watch this because of how influential it is and how much it plays on the genre. And look, I don't know how much I can add to what's already been said about this film. It's fun from start to finish. It's great, over the top performances, nice flourishes by Craven. It's just a true milestone of horror cinema. I assume you agree with that, Hermano?
Yeah, of course. It's been a while for me, but yeah, it's stuck around for a reason. It kind of turned horror on its head, and I feel like horror was kind of stagnant around the time it came out. It's just a lot of same old, and this kind of changed the game. So yeah, it's definitely an iconic film.
What are your opinions on the sequels?
Fun, because I think they don't take themselves too seriously. They're still sort of commenting on the genre, the idea of sequels. They're very not taking themselves seriously and being very self-aware that what they're doing is basically what they were commenting on, and they know it. So I think they're fine. They're never going to be as good as the first one, but I think I've seen maybe the second one the most, and then the third and fourth I've only maybe seen once or twice.
So yeah, that's a yay for Scream. And so last week was my birthday week, and what better way to finish off my birthday week than visiting my man crush, Gerard Butler, in the theater to see Joe Carnahan's latest film, Copshop, also starring Frank Grillo.
Tim, before you start, can I ask you a question?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think out of the both of us, or all three of us, you've been to the theater, back to the theater the most times, right?
Yeah. Yes, I would say so.
How's it been? Like, I keep meaning to ask you, but I always forget. How's the theater experience these days?
The theater experience, I think, has, I don't know, when it comes to other people in the theaters, in terms of participating in the movie experience, I think it's about the same. There have been noticeably less people, of course. The most crowded screening I went to was at Shang-Chi, the latest Marvel movie, and even though I think that was on a Monday. And yeah, there was a lot of people there, and I would say the majority of people are not wearing masks. I wear my mask, and I never feel unsafe or anything like that. Yeah, I mean, I'm vaccinated. I wear my mask. I feel like I'm in a pretty okay position. The seats are big enough that I feel comfortable enough, a comfortable enough distance away from people. So yeah, no, it's been fine. I think. I mean, what makes you ask the question?
Well, you already kind of answered the second part to my question. Is did you ever feel like unsafe, like where it was a little bit too crowded, people weren't wearing their masks, like you said? Do you feel like, I don't know if this is worth it? Like, am I in imminent danger right now? Like, I just wasn't sure if like slowly as you've been going, like more and more people were kind of coming back to the theater.
No, I think it really depends on the movie itself. Like Copshop, I think there were, I don't know, maybe 10 other people in the theater, and that was on a Saturday early afternoon, and they were behind me, so there weren't anybody else in my row. Yeah, I think if you go to a screening that of a movie that you don't anticipate a lot of box office out of, then I think you could be pretty good, especially if you go early enough. Dune, for example, I think overseas, the early releases overseas have been pretty good, higher than anticipated. So I'm curious to see what the turnout is going to be here in the States. And because, early projections was this is not going to be a moneymaker. It's kind of going to be written off as a loss almost. And especially with it also being on HBO at the same time. So that's the first dual release that I'm thinking to myself, I actually might want to go to the theater only for the spectacle of it, as well as the runtime, so I don't get distracted for 3 hours at home and spread it out over like 5 or 6. So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it's all about how the individual feels and how comfortable they are. So. Back to Copshop. The synopsis is, on the run from a lethal assassin, a wily con artist devises a scheme to hide out inside a small town police station, but when the hitman turns up at the precinct, an unsuspecting rookie cop finds herself caught in the crosshairs. Like I said, this stars Frank Grillo and Gerard Butler, but the standout of this movie is the woman who plays the rookie cop, Alexis Louder. I have never heard of her before, and she's apparently a character actor in a number of things, but this is like a borderline star-breaking performance by her, because she's really, really good in this role, pitted between Gerard Butler and Frank Grillo. And the movie itself, directed by Joe Carnahan, I don't know. I really like what Joe Carnahan did here. He has a knack of crafting like these really interesting characters, and he allows his actors to fill in those necessary details to make them pretty memorable. And both Grillo and Butler are, have memorable performances in terms of their characters. It's kind of, the movie itself is like a nicely tuned mix of like grimy 70s exploitation films and more modern fare. Like, I was reminded of Free Fire, Ben Wheatley's Free Fire. And, it has a really interesting mystery that unfolds at a well-paced time. And it's just constantly presents situations that kept me guessing. So I honestly didn't know where this movie was headed. And then there's, another character in this movie that shows up. He's a serial killer and he's just super crazy. It's a good movie. I would recommend both of you guys checking this out once it hits VOD or something like that. So Copshop, that's a yay. What about you, Hermano?
All right, since we were reviewing an anime this week, I figured I'd talk about a anime series that I saw over the summer. I'd put it off for a while just because I thought once I had heard of the premise a while ago, and you can kind of figure it out by the title of it. I thought the whole premise could get sort of boring, but I was quite surprised. And that series started in 2015, still ongoing. It's called One Punch Man.
Yeah.
Well, you seen this?
I have.
Have you seen both seasons?
I have only seen the first season. Okay.
So I saw the first 2. I think that's all that's available. I think there's more, though. It's been going on since 2015, like I said. The story of Saitama, a hero that does it just for fun and can defeat his enemies with a single punch. Tim, have you ever heard of this?
Only when Wally talked about it.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, my brother had kind of turned me on to it. He told me the premise, kind of mentioned what it was about, and I was like, wow, that sounds kind of silly and boring, and I don't think I could stick with a series that was about that, but I was quite surprised. Like, it's a total satire on kind of the whole superhero genre. It's this guy, the first episode starts with kind of his origin story. You figure out, like, throughout the series, like, just how he got so powerful, and even that in itself is played for comedic effect. Which I still laugh at the thought of it because everyone else is in total disbelief. Like, what? But yeah, it's just
a hard workout.
Yeah, seriously. But it's a lot of fun, man. Like, a lot of it, it's got a mix of, oh, this is totally serious, like dramatic anime stuff, and then you introduce Saitama and immediately it becomes like comedic, and it's a real balancing act of cool and satire. So I think it's a pretty fun anime series overall, and it hasn't gotten stale for me at all. Like even into the second season, I was still kind of on board. They do the best they can too with like, that whole Superman problem that they have where the guy's basically a god, right? Like if he's around all the time, like, and he can defeat things easily, like we can't always have him around, right? Like there's got to be, times where like maybe he only shows up for like a quick second or, at the last minute, but otherwise there's other characters involved, and that's where the drama comes from, and will they succeed and all that stuff. But ultimately it's called One Punch Man. He's always around somewhere, and like he's gonna come in and save the day in the last second. So I think, like I said, it's a lot of fun. So I highly recommend people check out One Punch Man if they're into anime. I saw it on Netflix. I'm a what now?
A cloud, but technically you're a virus.
I've been meaning to ask, but what? How? In that order, please.
Anywho, you know what show you should be always checking out?
The In Session Film Podcast. Oh, God damn it, Wally.
That's right, Tim. The In Session Film Podcast is JD and Brendan.
Wouldn't mind watching Brendan coming to save the day.
Hey, now.
Search your feelings. You know it to be true.
Anyways, each week the In Session Film Podcast chooses a movie to review.
And then create the top 3 list based on what they just saw.
This week, the In Session Film Podcast is reviewing The Card Counter.
And a top 3 list of Oscar Isaac scenes.
If Oscar Isaac dancing isn't number 1, we riot.
You can find their show on Apple Podcasts by searching for, you guessed it, the In Session Film Podcast.
Or on the web at insessionfilm.com.
So if you're looking for more great movie reviews and discussion,
then check out the In Session Film Podcast on Apple Podcasts.
Or on the web at insessionfilm.com.
So, Walter, how do you plan to fix this?
I'm working on it.
Being a cloud isn't so bad, especially with Halloween around the corner. Ooh.
On the Simplistic Reviews podcast, we talk movies. We talk TV. We talk.
Hello, Julie, what the heck are you doing?
Trying to make our spots sound more exciting by adding explosions.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you could have got the point across with sound effects, not the real thing.
Download the show on iTunes or at simplisticreviews.blogspot.com.
I'm sure your insurance company will cover that.
No, they won't.
No, they probably won't.
This podcast is a proud member of the Lamb Podcasting Network. Find the network at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Okay, let's talk about Redline.
I'm bowing out. I'm not gonna work with that jackass.
Why?
The nut job here says he don't like the engine I got for you. You sure he's on our side?
For the last time, this is Redline. We need an engine bigger than what you pulled. A lot bigger.
But a man's gotta drive that thing. What are you trying to do? Kill him or something? JP, this weasel's talking about hooking up a goddamn TRZ Airmaster.
Bitchin'!
No, it isn't. Sure, it's got power, but it's unstable as all hell. Four-cycle TRZ Airmaster.
All that thing needs is a teeny dose of that old Frisbee magic.
The hell it does.
Anyway, JP's the one who's gonna be driving. Or maybe you don't trust he's got what it takes to do it.
You're the only one I'm having trouble trusting around here. Who do you think you are, huh? Show up with a bag of money and you think that gives you the right to butt...
Just get him what he wants, okay?
Huh? You're taking his side?
Get him what he needs.
You're gonna get yourself killed!
Frisbee's in charge of the design and you're in charge of putting it together. You're supposed to be a team?
Fine then, whatever you say, Mr. Teamwork. Do either of you guys know how long it's gonna take to score one of those monsters?
It's your job to get what we need in time for the race. Just get us that engine and I'll handle the rest.
Sure, I'll just snap my fingers.
Hey, old man. Come on. Please let me race in his machine.
If you're fool enough to do it, then whatever. It's gonna cost you double, though.
You're the best. I owe you, man.
The plot, a story about the most popular racing event in the galaxy, the Redline, and the various racers who compete in it. The director, Takeshi Koike, the actors, or the voice talents of, Takuya Kimura, Yu Aoi, and Tadanobu Asano. I'm so sorry. Although the version I saw was dubbed in English, and I don't know who those people were. It doesn't matter. Wally, what did you think of this anime?
What did you guys think that I would think of this anime?
Oh, interesting. You want to play this game? I think you kind of dug it. Yeah, I think you're on the positive side.
I'm not sure actually. Knowing the types of, I know you and I like a lot of the similar animes, so I'm gonna go say, and this may be giving something away. I'm gonna say you didn't like it.
This is an A+ movie as far as I'm concerned. This movie is amazing. I had a smile on my face for the entirety of it. I was like, I'm in. Like from like the opening thing with like the now. Did you guys watch it subtitled or dubbed? Because I watched it dubbed.
I watched it dubbed.
Same.
All right. So opening frames where like you just see like the cars and just like the weird, like even the art style doesn't even look like what you would typically expect in an anime. It's really that. It's got that art style of when you see Americans trying to draw in that style. That makes sense?
Sure.
But just like the character design, the vehicle design, the pacing of all this, the world that it all takes place in, I was like, this movie's fucking amazing. Like I want more of this. And it goes off the fucking rails, like left and right. But it's the way it does it. It just does it so good that I was just like, "This is phenomenal." Like I don't know who came up with this idea. It's like watching. God, I was like I should have wrote it down my thoughts when I was watching it. But it's kind of like it's like watching a video game at the same time, in terms of like how the scenes are put together and some of the stuff that they do. I'd also put money. Well, maybe I'll talk about that when we get to spoilers. But yeah, I mean, this just had this like just strange awesomeness to it that I'd love to hear what you guys thought when you guys were checking it out. That's the key here, because it's like just from like the first like 5 minutes, like this is my movie, like this is my kind of thing.
Hermano. Come on, let's coming in to disappoint here.
Well, I don't know how Tim felt, but I may be the only negative Nancy on the show tonight. I was not a fan of this, not even a little bit. It started off immediately. Like I consider myself a very visual person, and then right off the bat, I knew I wasn't going to like it because I immediately didn't like the art style. I collected anime and watched anime a lot in the 90s and even into the 2000s. And even now I still do from time to time. And this type of animation, which reminded me a lot of like Aeon Flux from Liquid Television back in the day. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yep.
But not as good. But yeah, whenever I would see animes, like I would sometimes just blind buy anime. Like I had never heard of it. I would just kind of look at the box, read the story, and kind of make a decision. And after a while, I had bought so many animes that looked like this and they were almost always exclusively not that great. I just got turned off after a while. It felt like over and over I would see this art style. and I just imagine like there's some factory of like artists that are forced to draw in this style for some reason, like it's popular somewhere, or I just don't get it. Like I've never been a huge fan of this style. I feel like it reminds me of all the generic anime I've ever seen.
So for if you want to contrast it against the really good animes, what are the really good looking animes that you would contrast this to?
Well, one I thought of right away that came out way before was Akira,
Right?
Because I think they're both sort of dabbling in the same sort of genre.
Right.
But Akira looks, even though it came out like like 20 years almost before this, it looks infinitely better to me. I don't know why that is. There was just something about this anime that really turned me off, and it's not just the visuals. I don't want to just put it down just for that and say, oh, this movie's trash just because I didn't like the way it looked. I just thought story-wise too, it just felt like it was non-existent. Like the sole purpose of this movie's existence is to just feature the race scenes. There's like an opening race scene that, I think it got started off, pretty, well, I guess overall. Like it was propulsive, it was kind of out there. But then it's a big slog until like maybe the last 30 minutes, and then there's another race. And I just was so bored. I had to watch this in 2 sittings because I had to walk away at a point where I just could not watch this for even as short as it is. I had to watch it in 2 sittings. So yeah, I don't know. Dubs are always kind of hit and miss, but this was kind of a miss. I thought the voice actors were just barely trying. In my opinion, I don't know. I just disliked it almost every level. I couldn't think of a single thing I could really even talk about that I thought was well done overall. So yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm going to be the most negative tonight.
Yeah, and I'm going to be right in the middle of both of you, I guess. However, I do think that this movie looks amazing. I think I liked. I thought that the hand-drawn animation is stunning. I thought it did a really good job at displaying like those impossible speeds. There's a kinetic energy that jumps off the screen. I like the sound design too, outside of the dubbing or the voice acting or whatever. I thought the effects sounds were really cool. But I'm kind of with you, I guess, Hermano, on the story, and it doesn't help that I've always kind of had a personal aversion to anime and its mode of storytelling. It's so unlike anything I've been used to, that it's constantly been something that's kept me at arm's length, with a few exceptions. Akira, for example, Perfect Blue is another example of mixing interesting storytelling and character development along with the really cool animation and the crazy what the fuckness. And as far as the story, yeah, the plot is simple and it's, I guess, easy to understand if you want, but there's just enough fantastical elements that make me raise my eyebrows once again with this type of storytelling and go like, what the fuck? Like Funky Boy, for example, the cyborg machine head, the twins who drive a voluptuous transforming lady car, and a bunch of other alien nonsense. It's just it's stuff in here that I'm like, my eyes kind of glaze over. Yeah, to me, it's the animation that is by far the most interesting element of what propels this film. Wally, like, it's really interesting to hear how, captivated you were by this. And I know you've exclaimed how much you like this mode of storytelling too in terms of anime, but what makes this stand out among the best that you've seen so far?
Well, I mean, I like the visual style. I like the fact that it doesn't look like your typical, what you'd expect. It's got a different look to it, certainly, and I think that it conveys, I think, the kinetic speed of this movie and how it literally doesn't take its foot off the pedal the entire time. You know what I mean? Like
it does pause in the middle of this movie to have this guy and this girl talk to one another, and then these military and political figures. It's not all go.
but the story doesn't really take any sort of backseat. It's still all about this race and how they're going to finish it. And I think that there's some pretty interesting homages in there too. Like I know you didn't dig the lady robot car, but I grew up with a show that had a lady robot that would shoot her boobs off as missiles, and so I think that was kind of, there's an homage to that. There's an homage to like Sailor Moon because it's like they also use magic. You've got a guy who looks like like Devilman, who's like one of the race car drivers. You've got the machine head guy who is your typical like heavy, but also I think it's the same voice as the Rock Man from Ninja Scroll, and he's pulling the same role. You've got like the two bros that are in like the spider motorcycle. I think that there's a lot of like homages and archetypes that are all being kind of mashed into this movie. This would be I would buy this game if this was like an actual like multiplayer game.
Oh, so
it's gonna be so much fun to play.
There's a difference between an anime movie and an interactive video game. Yes, of course. If this was a game, I think it would be far more interesting.
It felt like a game though. Like in watching all of this, like it felt like you were playing a video game.
Kind of. Let's go back to this lady transforming car thing. Now, at what point has anime ever gone beyond the male gaze? Because this movie is very male gazy in terms of how the female characters are drawn, how they're displayed, and what you're looking at, and this is I don't know. It just seems to me like it's something that has never evolved in terms of what we're seeing in an anime.
Has it evolved? I think to an extent, but I also think too there's also times when it really just calls attention to itself on purpose to be that.
But to what end though? Like what's the point? Because I have to imagine these movies don't only cater or are interesting to the male audience. I'm sure there's a very wide female audience that enjoys these movies. So why continue? This movie is only 12 years old. It's not that old, and so why continue to animate and display in this style? Like Hermano, you've just said that you grew up watching anime. You blind buy them, and I imagine back in the day, very similar issues. But at what point does this art style move beyond that?
A lot of the ones I used to watch were either like hard like ninja ones. They would be there'd also be like some sci-fi ones, obviously like Evangelion. I would watch like Ninja Scroll. I would watch like dystopian ones like Fist of the North Star. Like I never got into the ones where like the cover just had some anime girl with like giant breasts. Like those, that was almost an immediate turnoff to me because I kind of knew like what you'd been mentioning, Tim. Like I knew what I was getting with that. It was supposed to titillate like teenage boys or something like that, and I wasn't into that. I was just kind of, it reminded me too much. It was a little too close to like hentai or something. I just was not interested in that at all. And in the ones that still do feature all that, like stuff like that, like Evangelion can get male gazy at times, but there's always like a psychological element to it. It's like a boy coming of age. It's not just supposed to be there to like, give some 13-year-old a boner. Like there's a something behind that it's supposed to be like thought provoking or something like, or even I would watch like thoughtful ones like Deep Perfect Blue. Like that one kind of blew my mind when I saw it. Paprika. I don't know if you really consider that anime, but I kind of lump it in because it's sort of inspired by it. So yeah, I don't know. Like that kind of turned me off about this film too, because it did feel that way. But I feel like even just like it felt like every character was over stylized. Like the main character JP is absolutely absurd looking to me. Like it just doesn't even look like, I don't know, like what I would consider like interesting or cool, like a look to a character. It just felt like an over stylization of it. And I just felt like even though like conceptually some of the characters are interesting, like you guys have mentioned, like the transforming girl car and like the machine head guy and stuff like that, I just felt like there was so many negatives overall. Like little things like that stood out to me were just swallowed up by every other negative thing I felt was in this film, where it just, I don't know, it just felt like almost all bad to me and just all the negative things I don't like about animes.
Yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from, but I find it interesting how as much as I'm kept at arm's distance with these type of films, that I still found something interesting to connect to. As far as the overall story, it's really interesting how there's this. The president of RoboWorld. I mean, come on, RoboWorld. What the fuck? Is like a proto Trump? Considering his mannerisms and the fascist leanings and all that kind of stuff. It's really interesting to see that as a comparative tool, despite this coming out much earlier. In terms of that dictator, I imagine that there's some sort of very unsubtle comment being made here in terms of how an area handles its refugees and its people and all that kind of stuff. But it's not anything that's meant to be subtle. So there's nothing subtle about this film at all. It's all very broad strokes. Which I mean, like, Wally, in your experience in terms of animes like this, like how in depth do they get with their themes and their the points that they're trying to make? Do they ever go, is subtlety ever a key here in these type of films?
It really depends. It really depends on the movie itself. I mean, you can go something like this where it's not subtle, but then if you watch something like Grave of the Fireflies, where it's certainly much more restrained in its storytelling. I'd even say something like any of the Studio Ghibli movies are definitely more restrained in their respective themes and what they're trying to do. And then you get stuff like this, which is just like loud and in your face. I think the thing is, I just had so much fun watching this. I think that's certainly one of the reasons why I'm so high on it. In terms of themes, I don't really feel that there was any sort of theme on this outside of like, let's make something cool.
Fair enough. Let's get into spoilers. All right, Wally, since you're the most positive on this, why don't you talk about what you liked most about the ending of this movie?
The fact that he won with his hairstyle. And just how off the wall this whole thing gets. And I will also pause. I actually have to look this one up. But this movie came out, looks like just after the Jason Statham death race, because it uses the same, almost nearly the same bomb trope from Death Race.
Huh.
So since we're in spoilers, the spoiler for the Jason Statham death race is that there's a bomb under his vehicle and they're going to kill him if he tries to win.
Hey, do you remember the Transporter movie where he flipped the car and
Transporter 2, baby,
took the bomb off from the crane, the hanging crane?
Yep.
Yeah. Was that the second one? I thought it was the third one.
That's the second one.
Oh,
Transporter 2.
Yikes.
Transporter 3 is absolute garbage.
Oh, it was. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
But in Death Race, the mechanic is like, you think you'd be able to mess with my car without me knowing about it? And in this, the other mechanic sees it in the replay, and then comes in to make the save, and then uses. I love how he uses the bomb to just blow the rest of the car away to turn it into a again flying object.
Well, wait a minute. Didn't he hit the button accidentally when he was hugging his friend there?
No, he does it on purpose.
Oh, really?
He's like, don't worry. He's like, don't worry about it. And he, because the other mechanic, Frisbee, is going like, what the fuck are you doing? And he's like, don't worry about it. And then that catapults the car forward, and you have this like, this is what pod racing should be.
I was reminded of the pod race. That's right. Yes.
This is really like what the pod race should have been like, as opposed to what we actually got.
Well, wait a second. Look, the pod race of the Phantom Menace is probably outside of the final lightsaber battle, the best part of that movie.
No.
Oh, jeez.
You know why, Tim? I don't like foregone conclusions.
Okay.
There's no way he ever loses that race.
Okay.
He has to get off the planet.
Okay. What do you make out of this this Motorhead guy just being all happy at the end after he loses the race and sees how these two people fall in love?
Because Motorhead does it he lives for racing. He lives for it. JP lives to win, and Motorhead Machine Head just wants to race. That's what he does.
But
that's his thing.
But why is he all happy at the end then?
Because he got a great race out of it. It was it was neck and neck to the very end. He lost to a worthy opponent.
Okay, if you say so. Hermano, I imagine you have nothing positive to say about the ending of this movie.
No, I mean, I find it interesting, like Wally talking about foregone conclusions. I felt like how this movie's going to end. I mean, it felt weird too. It felt like I felt about like the first Fast and Furious films, where like basically if you have nitrous, you win.
Right.
Like they basically are popping pills. They're doing like the steroids to a bodybuilder is what these guys are doing with their race cars. Like it's absurd, because you even see some other characters later just quit because they're way too fast. Like we can't even keep up with them because they're popping these whatever they are. It's like I don't even know what they were.
Or NOS pills.
It was like a NOS pill or something into their cars, and like I don't know. It just felt like where it's going to be the last two, because they've been setting up this Machine Head guy, and then JP as like kind of like this lovable loser of sorts with the crazy hair or whatever. Like it just felt like I could tell where the film was going, and I don't know. It really comes down to the visuals and the story for me. Like the story is basically non-existent. It's like you're introduced to the characters right away, then you're just introduced to a lot more characters in sort of a montage style. You don't care about any of them. Like there was nothing to grab onto in this film for me. I was like, I don't care about the main character. I don't care about his love story. I don't care about his partner and his dealings with the gangsters or whatever. I don't care about the old man mechanic. I don't care about like any of the other racers. I just didn't care about any of it. I was like, this film is doing the bare minimum and is only really focused on the races, which I guess like if it's a film about racing, you want to make those the best scenes in the film, but because it's got to be more than just that. Like the middle half of this movie is like just a mess. Like I couldn't follow anything. And then the Robo World stuff where it's like, oh, Robo World just doesn't want us to race on their planet for reasons. And then like they kind of give you maybe a sort of glimpse at like why, because they're secretly have some biological weapon, which I think that was the Akira influence with was it Funky Boy or whatever?
Funky Boy.
Yeah. Like that right there is the scene that really reminded me of like the Akira influence, but it was a little bit too little too late at that point. I was just like, I don't know, man. There's just really nothing in this thing for me.
Okay. Well, I guess we're ready to get into grades then.
But here's a question.
Oh, yeah.
Do JP and Sonoshi die at the end?
I don't know. I don't care.
Are they dead?
I don't
when
care.
They cross the finish line, they because they've been blown up and then they blow out of the car at tremendous speeds.
It does. Why? What do you think?
It could go either way. I was just curious what you guys.
Well, you don't have an opinion either way.
It could go. To me, it could go either way. I was just curious to see if you guys had any input on that.
I don't care. Hermano, I imagine you don't care at all.
I thought about it for a quick second and it immediately left my mind.
So there's your answer, Wally. Sorry.
Okay.
All right, grades, Wally.
A fuck plus. You know this was coming.
Yeah, I'm going B minus. It's just enough for me to be like, that was cool. I'm kind of glad I watched it because it looked cool. Yeah, that's about it. Hermano?
It's like a D plus for me. There was very little for me to enjoy in this thing. I really felt like a slog to me, so D plus.
All right, that does it for this episode of the First Time Watchers podcast. Donate via patreon.com/firsttimewatchers or buy stuff at zazzle.com/firsttimewatchers.
Talk to us on Twitter at 1STTimeWatchers on Twitter.
Or write to us at our email, firsttimewatchers@gmail.com.
Please leave a review for us on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher. We love feedback. If you have any suggestions of movies for us to watch, please send a tweet or an email. We haven't gotten a listener suggestion in a long time. I'd like a suggestion by the listener.
Yeah, we love to. You put out a tweet, Tim. So get a listen. Let's be active on this.
No, you bet. Speaking of suggestions, let's recommend a movie, Wally.
All right, so I'm going to recommend a movie from 1987, and a segment of this actually ran on Liquid Television. The movie is called Neo Tokyo. It is a trilogy of 3 stories, but they're all separate stories. There's Labyrinth and Labyrinthios, about a girl and her cat going into a strange land. There's Construction Cancellation, which is about a guy who has to destroy all robots. But the middle story is called The Running Man. And it's about racing on a track in a deadly race. And a racer takes on the ultimate opponent, himself. It is pretty visually stunning, especially the Running Man segment. I remember watching that just like on tape a bunch of times when Liquid TV was on the air. So I would recommend Neo Tokyo, which I think is the progenitor to this movie.
Okay, I will recommend a movie that I caught up with over the summer that was released this year. It's also on HBO Max right now. It is called Shiva Baby. This has nothing to do with what we watched, by the way. Shiva Baby, synopsis. At a Jewish funeral service with her parents, a college student runs into her sugar daddy. Written and directed by Emma Seligman, stars Rachel Sennett, who plays the college student. And if you like uncomfortable situations and awkward humor, this is the movie for you. It's a very specific and seemingly very accurate type of comedy realism that would probably make a lot of people just crawl out of their skins. There's a rising level of anxiety as the film goes on. It's really well handled and could only be pulled off by an individual who has experienced such things in real life. So this movie feels very personal. And I think Rachel Sennett puts on a pretty brilliant performance of someone caught in like some impossible situations. And there's a finale to this that just killed me. It was hilarious. So I recommend Shiva Baby, even though it probably wouldn't be for everybody, the type of comedy and situations that they're put in. So, Hermano.
All right, because we have HBO Max, we have access to a lot of the Studio Ghibli films. I thought I'd try to introduce some of them to my kids, and I started off with the one I want to talk about from 1988, My Neighbor Totoro. When 2 girls move to the country to be near their ailing mother, they have adventures with the wondrous forest spirits who live nearby. Have you guys both seen My Neighbor Totoro?
I have not.
Oh, Wally, I think you'd dig it. Really classic animation style, Studio Ghibli style, which I love their style because it just looks like illustrations come to life. Yeah, like I wasn't quite sure how it would hit my kids because, they're not like, a lot of the other cartoons my kids are into. Like my kids are into like, like a lot of the stuff they see on like Nickelodeon and like Cartoon Network and things like that. A lot more like bombastic stuff where My Neighbor Totoro was more of like just kind of a film about like childhood and, I guess your first glimpse with kind of like a serious event in your life where like both of these kids' mom is sick and, there's an uncertainty there. There's obviously a fantastical element too with like the forest spirits and stuff like that, but it's just a very different feel to the Studio Ghibli films. To me, they feel kind of like what like Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street were to us for kids. As kids, I mean, and, my kids aren't always into that stuff because they can't appreciate it now as kids, but maybe when they're adults they'll look back on it more fondly. So yeah, I'm glad so far they've seen My Neighbor Totoro, Spirited Away, and Kiki's Delivery Service, and so far I'm 3 for 3. They've enjoyed all 3 of them. So yeah, I highly recommend My Neighbor Totoro as well as a lot of the other Studio Ghibli films.
All right, stay tuned for our next episode. We will kick off Spooky Movie Month a little bit early to talk about the latest James Wan film, Malignant.
That's the First Time Watchers podcast because we like to watch.
After work is over. excess. Harder, better, faster, stronger. Work it harder, make it better, do it faster, excess, stronger. More than ever, hour after hour, work is never over. Work it harder, make it better, do it faster, excess, stronger. More than ever, hour after hour, work is never over. Work it harder, make it better, do it faster, excess, stronger. More than ever, hour after hour, work is never over. Work it harder, make it better, do it faster, excess, stronger. More than ever, hour after hour, work is never over. Work it harder, make it better.
No, I just couldn't remember if I had switched that that input I need to switch to for the mic.
Don't you love it when you switch inputs?
I don't even know what that means. Is that a euphemism for something?
Sure, why not?
Like switching sexual preference?
Inputs, no. Not preference. Inputs. Interpret as you will what input I mean.
Tim, I'm trying to read between the lines. I feel like you drew some lines and I'm trying to read in between them.
I have a feeling you're being willfully obstinate.
Did you get that text from Wally?
I did.
Any update?
That little shit.
Great. You know, being a cloud isn't so bad, especially with Halloween around the corner. Ooh.
Oh, it scared me. It's like it was a ghost in the right next to me.
I didn't say I was a good ghost, okay?
What was that, Hermano?
I was like, I never said I was a professional ghost.